3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Hey, Internet! It's Matt from the DorkLords. It is Joe from the Brothers Arda. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to you, Joe. Good to see you up in there in Canada.
Yep, good to see you too, Matt, down there south in U.S. of A.
That's right. In fact, I just got my ticket to see the Lord of the Rings, the musical, in a couple of weeks. It happens to be just a short walk from my apartment at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater. So I will chat about my impressions about that when we have our next chapter talk. How about that?
Oh, please do. Please do. That sounds exciting.
I mean, I'm a little like, can you tell the whole story in 3 hours? Especially if you're breaking for songs every couple of minutes. But we'll figure. Anyway, I'm intrigued to see what poetry or lyrics they use from the books. All the anyway. So yeah,
I'll say this: when it comes to Lord of the Rings being a musical, arguably, I'm one of those weirdos who thinks it should have been an animation, the original Peter Jackson movies. And they should have musical movies, like where characters break out into songs, because the novel is arguably a musical novel, as Tolkien introduces a lot of songs.
No, there's a ton of music. Right. It's not one of those things where it's a tough sell to figure out how you would put music into Lord of the Rings. So yeah.
The radio drama was a musical. So this is something where we really ought to have gotten a musical, and we didn't. My problem is 3 hours does not seem like a very long time. What they should have done is probably booked it for like the whole weekend, where you have like 4 hours per each section. Even that's feeling cramped, but I understand that that'd be a lot to memorize and remember for. But hey, like that still sounds like an awesome experience.
No, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. Plus, there's like this kind of like a cool, it's like a theater. It's not a theater in the round per se, but it's a experimental theater design that they're using for this thing. Anyway, it should be interesting, and I will give you my thoughts after having seen it. But today, we are talking about Book 1, Chapter 11 of the Fellowship of the Ring, the chapter entitled "A Knife in the Dark." Quick summary of the chapter before I turn it over to you, Joe, for more detailed run through here. We open with the unofficial hero of the trilogy, Fredegar Bulger, outsmarting 3 Nazgul on his own, raising the alarm in Crick Hollow, chasing the Nazgul out of the Shire. We've been jokingly inserting the "what would Fredegar do" in the earlier chapters. This is his finest hour. Right here in this book, in this chapter. Back in Bree, our heroes find that their original room at the Prancing Pony has been tossed by the Nazgul. Their ponies are gone. They're forced to make a very public exit from Bree, which is not good for when you're attempting to sneak away. They travel off-road, following Strider to Weathertop, where they hope to meet up with Gandalf. Once they get to Weathertop, they get attacked by 5 Nazgul, including the Witch King. Frodo puts on the ring, sees the Nazgul in their spirit form, gets stabbed by the Witch King's Morgul blade moments before Strider races in to save the day. End of the chapter ends on a big, tense, high moment. With all that said, Joe and Dan, I turn it over to you to take us through this chapter in more detail.
Why? You just did. So,
and we're done. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back for chapter 12.
Yeah. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And Dan and I have also written a book, so check that out. And check out Matt's channel, obviously. So I'm just kidding. Actually, yeah.
You're here, so great. Hey.
Freddie definitely has a pretty great moment. Rather than spending his time stuffing his face, he's doing what the others should have done and basically fending off the Nazgul. But in all seriousness, like the Kyle Katarn, Chuck Norris jokes aside, Freddie actually holds his own really well.
He definitely does. It's not just like hyping him up. Like he doesn't. I mean, give him his due. I mean, he was terrified to enter into the old forest, but he accepted what I would say is arguably a more dangerous assignment, which is basically set himself up as bait for the Nazgul. So while they're traveling, he's like, I'll pretend to be Frodo and make the Nazgul attack me. Like, whoa. Yeah. And he pulls it off. He gives them the time. He's a successful decoy, and he lives to tell the tale about it. So good on him. Well done, Freddie. Right. Fear foes, fire. It was the Robert mentions that. Yeah. Anyway. Yep.
And he also ends up going a little nuts with fear, which who could blame him? And I do like the order by the Nazgul. Open in the name of Mordor.
Yeah, they're not trying to hide it. They're not like, hey, anyway, we're just whatever. We're selling Bibles. Could you whatever? They're like, no, we declare our purpose. And they go around and look around. But yes, exactly, Mark. This is what Fredegar did.
Now, that said, you brought up a good point. This is not a realistic chapter, because if it was, there would have been Jehovah's Witnesses who already would have stopped by.
realized that Frodo was not there, and then okay.
And Joe wouldn't have stolen my joke.
Yeah. The Nazgul are about as evil as they are, so maybe the Nazgul are the Jehovah's Witnesses, and we just never realized it.
That's a good point.
Maybe that will happen when Shaggy pulls the mask off. I'm joking. I got to stop with it.
All right. So anyway, yes, Freddie raises the alarm, and basically, the society around Crick Hollow basically chase our Nazgul out of the Shire.
Yeah.
So good on them.
Yeah. I mean, no offense if my joke is just a bad joke. Anyways, Brandy Hall raised the alarm, and what's interesting is they've not used their war horn in about 100 years. Not since the White Wolves came in the fell winter when the Brandywine was frozen over. Wow, that's been a long time. There's been no trouble in the Shire for that long. That is an incredible accomplishment.
I'm wondering if that's the same long winter. I believe that's when Gandalf first meets up with the hobbits in the Shire and basically becomes impressed with them, their ability for empathy, because they're all struggling to survive. But he notices that in the middle of this, we're all dying from hunger and cold, that they're able to care for each other. And that strikes a chord with Gandalf that he remembers, all the way through the War of the Ring.
Yep. I think it was. And so this is an interesting bit of lore that Tolkien refers back to.
Hail to thee, Napdragon. Sorry.
Hello, Napdragon. Welcome. Now, as to the Nazgul, they apparently end up doing something kind of badass, but also kind of terrifying. Once they realize the house is empty and the ring is no longer there, they decide to basically ride down the guards at the gate and vanished from the Shire. Ride down means they butchered the guards at the gate.
That's right. It kind of undercuts it, but that's what I get out of that too. Like, they killed them. I mean, anyway, yeah. Sounds like there's casualties.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
So that Tolkien was hiding a slasher flick in the middle of his story.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, well, whatever. If you were to kindly look at it, maybe they rode them down and like they made them like leap out of the way at the last second, but ride them down strongly suggests, killing them off.
Well, what I was going to, I had to undertake back in university quite a few 19th century lit courses, and the ride down means kill. So
I got you. No, I agree.
Yeah,
I think
you know this. I know this. But
And
it just has to be said for the audience.
And a good professor was a linguist.
Yeah.
So,
it certainly wasn't an accidental verbiage. Yeah.
And he would have grown up reading the writers of the 19th century because, he was very much a man of that era. In a way, I know it's a bit of a weird thing to comment, but the Victorian period began in the 1820s, I believe. And really, in a way, World War I and II are in a way still part of that era in terms of literature, thinking, and philosophy. The Britain from 1827 or even 1815 up until 1945 is all really one long era. And this is one extended period, which in my view is a bit of the British golden age, the two world wars excluded. So the Britain of even 1945 is so far away from the Britain of 1962 or of today, it might as well be centuries away behind us.
Robert mentions 1830s. That's where he's going with. So thank you, Robert.
I believe it's around 1837, is it not? I'm not.
I wouldn't be that specific on it. So we're going to, Robert, you're in. I appreciate it, sir.
Let me just look her up real quick. She was born 1819, and her reign began. Let me just. Got to go into Wikipedia, and my internet's not great. Let's see. Her reign began as Queen of the United Kingdom in 1838. So I'm a year off. Oh, right. It was right after around the time of the of the 1 year Irish Canadian Rebellion of 1838, I believe.
So it's 30. I got 1837. Yeah, 80.
37, like
37.
I originally said. Wikipedia has it at 1838. So,
all right, Joe has an interesting comment here where he says, ride down in the dictionary to tread under one's horse's feet, overthrow, trample. So maybe not killed. I personally was trampled by a horse long ago, and I live to tell the tale. But so yes, but it's not something I'd recommend. I'll put it that way.
Well, it's supposed to be a euphemism for killed.
Yeah.
Either by trampling or by passing by with a weapon like a spear or a sword.
Right. A lance.
Well, the main writer I'm referring to is Walter Scott, who was from his Ivanhoe and whatnot. But Joe brings up a lot of good points. Thank you for correcting me on the date. I don't know why Wikipedia said 1838. It's evidently 1837.
Yep. No worries. Oh, so the coronation was in 1838. Reign began in 37. Thank you, Robert.
Okay. Thank you, Robert,
for
the clarification. I appreciate that, truly. Sorry for all the mistakes.
Not there.
Now, as for our heroes, we dash over to them where Frodo's had a good night's sleep. And
Frodo, I thought it was Fredegar. I thought it was Freddy that was the hero.
Yeah, but
always the hero.
The tertiary hero, Frodo,
yes,
ends up waking up and goes to fetch Mr. Butterbur. But Mr. Butterbur has an interesting phrase he uses. Never has such a thing happen in my time. I only note this down in my notes because apparently this bears a similarity to I wish it had not happened in my time.
Oh, I
And
see what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
it's interesting that this turn of phrase is used twice here, once earlier in the novel and now here. So that Butterbur, I would say the implication here is that, much as he's saying, never has such a thing happened in my time, one could read into that there's a lot of people, like Gandalf said, who wishes this had not happened in their time, but it is. These are the cards they're dealt. It just made me pity Butterbur to an extent.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, there's a lot to like about him too, and he's a very sympathetic character. And while he's absent-minded and such, as we saw in the last chapter, he has a very good heart, and that's why I think Gandalf relies on him the way he does.
Now, what's interesting is that Strider ends up. You let out. Oh.
Oh, all right. We've got a dog interruption. It's Huon. Get him, Huon.
Yeah, it's because our uncle and our aunt is visiting. But
Life always intervenes in things. That's fine.
But we'll continue. Our dog just always goes off at the alarm bell, not at the doorbell. But anyways, Strider interestingly keeps his. I wrote down sang-froid, so my notes are in French. A level head. He keeps a level head throughout all this, while everyone else is kind of panicking because of how the ponies have been let loose and whatnot. Strider keeps his head level because, guests unable to sleep in their beds and good bolsters ruined and all. What are we coming to? Dark times, said Strider. But for the present, you may be left in peace when you have got rid of us. We will leave at once. Never mind about breakfast. A drink and a bite standing will have to do. We shall be packed in a few minutes. Now, Strider here is operating with the mindset of a ranger or someone like Conan, who's ready at a moment's notice to snap into action. But not everyone is like Aurelian, even from the crisis of the 3rd century of Rome. Hand quick to the spear or quick to the sword. Not everyone is like that. And to an extent, Strider, his efforts to protect the hobbits are hampered by the hobbits to an extent because they're craving their first and second breakfasts. And Strider, has a lot of pragmatism and doesn't really see the point in this. And what's interesting is that Bill Fernie has got a poor old half-starved pony, and so Bill Fernie is charging about 12 coins for the pony, which is just mind-blowingly expensive for such a creature. Like, I only know a little bit about the currency and whatnot in the Middle Ages, but I believe a pony would probably be around like a few pence or something, not even a shilling. And if every coin is basically a shilling or even a livre from France, this is Bill Fernie's basically just robbing the blind.
But speaking of unsung heroes, Bill the Pony. Now that's what we're talking about here. At that point, it's an unnamed pony, which Sam later nurses back to health and names Bill, which I assume is in honor of Bill Fernie. But I'd actually kind of forgotten how Bill the Pony comes to the Fellowship, and so it's actually due to what essentially is a misstep from this enemy spy, Bill Fernie. Bill has been almost certainly involved in chasing away all the available steeds in town, but he can't help making a little extra coin on the side. So he agrees to sell his half-starved pony for this incredibly inflated price.
Because
yeah. Well, yes. And then you get, Bill the Pony. Come on, legend. Imagine like the combo of Fredegar riding Bill the pony. You've got like this heroic combo.
Given how fat Freddy is,
it would be one of the heroic exploits of Bill to carry Fredegar around. But yeah, Bill survived. They let him loose at Moria because they don't want to take him through the mines, and he finds his way alone back to Bree. He eventually gets his revenge on Bill Fernie. He gets to kick him. And Sam rides Bill the pony to the Grey Havens to say goodbye to Frodo. So Bill has a great storyline, good arc.
But I would argue it'd be more Fatty carrying Bill the pony, but that's just me.
I got you.
Because
by the way, we should reference something here. Eric asked a question, which we can answer as we go through here, as we get maybe toward the end of the chapter when we're talking more of the Nazgul. But he says, "Do you need to know what the Nazgul are to be fully affected by their powers? Mary comes under the Black Breath, is quickly revived before knowing what they are." That's his point. And then he says, while Faramir knows what they are and almost dies when he falls under the Black Breath. So he's wondering if there's if of the powers, somehow it enhances the powers of the Nazgul. It's not a question I had considered before. Your evidence is intriguing, but yeah, so something to think about.
I got a theory.
You got a theory. All right.
It's not if you're aware of it. Well, that's part of it, but it's how afraid you are of them.
Got you. Fear-based.
Yeah, it's fear-based. And the thing is, Faramir likely fears them a lot more because he knows about the Black Breath. He knows what the Nazgul are. It's duration of exposure. I do think that's what it is as well. But I also, because he was obviously exposed for longer. But I also think, Faramir, but I also think it might be fear-based. Faramir would have greater reason to fear them because he's familiar with them. Whereas Mary is treading in completely lacking in all knowledge about them. So he's not looking to be fearful of their breath, so to speak. But I do think it's over levels and also fear. Based.
Interesting note about going back to Bill the Pony. So about the purchase of Bill the Pony from the deceitful Bill Fernie. I might be reading a little much into this, but I don't think I am. Mr. Butterbur pays the fee himself again because he's a good guy, and he's like, "Hey, you lost your horses, your ponies while they were in my care," and so he also compensates Mary for the loss of the ponies that ran off. So taking into account Tolkien, devout Catholic, that's pretty much self-evident. The amount of the compensation did strike me. So the quote is, he's talking about Butterbur. "He was an honest man, and well off as things were reckoned in Bree. But 30 silver pennies was a sore blow to him, and being cheated by Bill Fernie made it the harder to bear." So I'm like, Bill Fernie, the Judas of Bree. 30 pieces of silver was what it took to anyway. But so it's interesting that he ended up using that amount of money in regarding to this guy who betrayed the Fellowship, essentially.
Let me look something up real quick. All
right, continue. While you look something up, I can move along. In fact, more Bill Fernie chat. One of the things that Bill Fernie says, he sees them on the road as they're leaving very publicly. And the quote is...
never mind.
Okay.
I thought to look something up. And the thing that I was looking up was the detail of how much Joseph in the Old Testament had been sold for, but it was 20 pieces of silver, not 30. I thought it was both times 30, but it looks like with Joseph it was 20 and Jesus it was 30.
All right.
10 pieces of silver difference. Judas got more of his money's worth.
Okay, fair enough.
Although,
but it's just an interesting little, okay. The fact that it was 30 and it's silver, and he mentions it specifically in the quote, and it's referring to a deception that is costing our heroes. Anyway, inflation, exactly, Thomas. So
that the Farsis didn't know how to run their economy quite like Joseph's brothers did, and the slave traders there. They had a much better economy.
One of the interesting things that Fernie does is he gives a couple of nicknames for Strider. Not just Strider, but so as they're walking past him and he's taunting them before Sam wings him with an apple, he says, "Morning, Longshanks. Off early? Found some friends at last?" Strider nodded but did not answer. "Morning, my little friends," he said to the others. "I suppose you know who you've taken up with. It's Stick-it-not Strider, that is. Though I've heard other names not so pretty. Watch out tonight. And you, Sammy, don't go ill-treating my poor old pony." Pah! He spat again. So it's this Stick-it-not Strider is this nickname that I don't know that we see ever again in the book. I don't know that anybody else calls him that.
And Longshanks.
And Longshanks. Okay,
that's an interesting thing to call Aragorn, because Longshanks is a Scottish term for long legs, which was also given to perhaps the
hammer of the Scots, right?
Yeah, the second most brutal English king of that era. And Longshanks was... Now, I know Tolkien likes to romanticize English history and whatnot in England, but I don't think he was blind to the brutality and cruelty inherent in Longshanks. In that, I think I can't see Edward I with his savagery and his brutality being a favorite figure of Tolkien's. So it's also, I think, a subtle insult against Edward to compare him to the Hammer of the Scots in a way. And this is an interesting thing he does, where he's also doing another thing of, I think, misleading you. Like, if you're expecting, because he's been compared to Edward I, for Aragorn to turn out like Edward, that is to say, early on, Edward was a good king, but then he went foul. Later in his reign, he became corrupt and greedy and cruel and savage. So that's almost what Tolkien's falsely hinting at, and then he's going to, I don't want to say subvert, but he's going to kind of completely veer away from that. But he is hinting at a dark side to Aragorn, even as he's saying, oh, Aragorn might turn out like Longshanks, that is to say, a brute, but he's not going to. Later we know he's not going to. Aragorn is King Arthur. So there's a lot he's playing with language here, not just with English, but also Scots.
Well, so, it was interesting with this whole Stick-it-not Strider. Like, I guess my initial thought was, like, as far as an insult goes, I thought he might be suggesting that Aragorn is a vagabond wanderer who never sticks around anywhere. But when I looked it up, it appears that it actually means more stop at nothing, essentially. The implication being that he'll do whatever it takes, even for his own ends, even if it means endangering his own friends.
He's calling him
to achieve his ends.
He's calling him ruthless and evil.
Yeah, right. Yes, yeah. I like an unscrupulous guy who's gonna like screw over his friends for his own, ends. Anyway,
now, I'll actually say one thing. There is one grain of truth in those insults. Aragorn is ruthless. Like, what I mean is, he's good, but not safe. Like, the classic idea of characters like Ivanhoe, Strider, Conan, and whatnot was that, even Aslan, the thinking from 1815 up to 1945 in most books I've read was your good guy is at times more capable of, I guess you could say, violence, and more capable of, like, if push comes to shove, of basically they're a lot more dangerous than any modern bad boy might be. They're just patient and they just give you fair warning before they strike. And that's an interesting image that was felt at the time. And what's interesting is that it's not just in, let's say, English literature or American literature at the time, But even in the Musashi novel of the 1930s, Musashi is described as good but not safe. So this was an ideal that pervaded all cultures at the time. And really, these days, a lot of people romanticize the bad boy, but I would argue originally the classic knight was far more romanticized, but also his brutal side was hidden under the surface, but was always, I don't want to say a hair trigger away from going off, but it is supposed in stories like this that there is a brutal side to these figures. And Strider is, with his curt ways and his level-headedness and his impatience, he is behaving a lot like, say, Conan it does in Hour of the Dragon. So there is that similarity. Sorry for the tangent.
No, good tangent. Good tangent, sir. Yeah, all insults have some little grain of truth in them, right? And that's what makes them hurt more. Like, oh, but yeah, in this case, I think he cares about his we'll call them wards, but the folks that
the difference between Strider and Conan is Conan would have probably backhanded Bill Ferny and told him to be quiet.
Well, that's what Sam does, right? Sam's like hits him and is like, keep your mouth shut.
But
like, waste of a good apple. Which he has a tagline too, which is pretty good. That's a good ending line as you've hit the guy, you're walking on, and you throw out the last little tag on him.
But Strider just carries on. He doesn't care. This guy can say what he wills. Strider doesn't care.
Yeah. And he's focused.
Strider has thick skin, I think, is the point here. And that's an admirable quality. Much as I like Conan, in some ways, Strider has thicker skin than him.
So I brought up the map here just to show generally where they're traveling here. So they start at Bree, and then they're going to go off road because they have the best tracker in the world, basically. So they go off road and they get to Amansul, Weathertop, by way of the Midgewater Marshes, and so that's where this chapter is going to take us from Bree to Amansul. But, via the wilderness. You get that, by the way, I found this picture of Fredegar. There aren't many pictures. There's not much artwork about Fredegar Bulger, unfortunately. That should change. But this was this is him running from the house in advance of the Nazgul approaching. Anyway.
It's just hard to draw his greatness. That's why.
Right. Good point. They got to build a pony here as well. So there you go. But
the most important fellowship.
That's right. Yep. So here's a artist depiction of the Midgewater Marshes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Oh, that's right. Thomas is like, yeah, actually, it was a very flattering. It's like those paintings of Henry VIII. You're like, oh no, he would, slimming effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, sorry, didn't mean to derail you. So they're off. They're on their way to Weathertop, off-roading it.
When they see in the distance a great deal of white flashes. Now that's pretty interesting because. And the flashes are obviously Gandalf fending off the Nazgul.
Which is what Aragorn realizes later when they get to the site and he starts to do his tracking. He's like, this is probably what's happened a few days ago. But yeah.
What's interesting, though, is that the Nazgul are able to hold their own against Gandalf fairly well. And the number of flashes of light also suggests Gandalf's kind of panicking. And
yeah, we've seen him, I believe, use lightning before in The Hobbit. I think he was. I think there were lightning strikes on approaching orcs.
But also fire.
But yeah, great point. Yeah. So anyway, just to say, that's probably part of his power set.
Yeah.
Pop.
He's obviously a higher level than level 3.
Yes, yes. You need the 3rd level lightning bolt spell. Typically go with the fireball, frankly, but but yes,
But
beggars can't be choosers.
yeah, but it's obvious, like I said, he's panicking and trying to blast at them to get them away, and they're trying to get closer to stab him with a Morgul blade.
Exactly, Mark, in Goblin Town. Yep, did the lightning there.
Yeah. So
sorry, anyway, but yes.
And honestly, that's an interesting fight. I'd have loved to see on screen just because.
Yeah, and it's really cool. Again, it's one of those. It's one of the things I love about Tolkien's writing is that he implies these things that are like, look, this world is so big. There are amazing things happening at any given moment, and I'm just showing you this in this moment I'm here. But as you look ahead, you can see these flashes of light. Oh, okay, there must be some a storm ahead. No, it was a wizard fighting with a series of Nazgul, on this giant abandoned ruins of a tower. I mean, how cool is that? And the fact that he can just kind of toss that off and be like, it was there, it happened, but I didn't have to show you it beat by beat. You get it. I was like, damn, well done, sir.
Yeah, I'm just saying in an animation or in a movie, it'd be awesome to see that and just have Gandalf, backing away and trying to blast at them while they're basically trying to avoid it and trying to get closer.
Yeah, and it's really cool the fact that they get there and there's no one there. So there's just first you get, okay, well, at least they didn't kill Gandalf, but also he had to leave in a hurry. And so you feel like all's not well. So, yeah.
He fled. So it is a victory for them in a way because they delayed the reunion. On the other hand, Gandalf did not die like they wanted. So he kind of, basically he fled and they're giving chase. And it's eerie to think that anyone could stand up to Gandalf. Now, I know there's the whole thing with the, later, but the thing is that's a Maiar just as he is. But these Nazgul are not Maiar, and yet they're able to face him off. And that's actually kind of scary that what were once mortal men doomed to die are able to threaten and terrify a Maiar. That, especially one as powerful and wise and clever as Gandalf. In his order, he's second best to Saruman. And these guys very nearly got the better of him. That's we should at no point think of the entire quest as a done deal from the start. Even Gandalf was risking his neck 24/7. So this is a pretty darn great moment. One of my favorites.
Joe is asking if there's maybe a double meaning for Knife in the Dark, that starts with a drawn blade at Crick Hollow, which is obviously at night, and then it ends with this the more famous knife incident. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah,
I'd say
well noted.
There's two more incidences. There's Bill Ferny's obvious betrayal, and there's
like a knife in the back.
Yeah, and there's also the attempt to kill Gandalf by the Nazgul.
So Mark brings up the fact that there's two major encounters. I would say maybe even three major encounters where several Nazgul in the same chapter, both persons live to tell the tale. So you've got Fredegar lives, Gandalf lives, and Frodo and company live. So yeah, you have kind of three in a way.
Yeah. So you have four incidences with their blades, with a knife in the dark. Crick Hollow, Gandalf near Amun's School, as well as Bill Ferny's betrayal. And you have here. So you have a metaphorical knife and three literal knives in the dark. So Tolkien did something brilliant here by naming it that. That was a brilliant title for this chapter.
And I've got some more notes on that when we start talking about the different lore, the poems that are mentioned in this chapter as well. But
I can't wait to get to those. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, let me just check. And the lights also fade. I mean, so I can't talk. They also fade, so that suggests the battle is over at that point. Obviously, Gandalf fled at that point. They voyaged through Midgewater marshes. Let's see. on page 184 of the Black Book edition that I have, we have Frodo complains about how he's getting thinner, which is pretty funny to me, at least. I just
but that's also interesting because he mentions like, oh, I could turn into a wraith, which he's doing. It's almost like a little gallows humor, but Strider immediately is like, shut up! What do you do? Why would you even bring that about? But it's basically a, hey, this is actually going to happen to me over time because I have this ring. I'm going to turn into a wraith, but also maybe it's because I'm hungry. But anyway, it's a funny joke that is also incredibly serious.
And it's a very English joke, but Aragorn obviously
do not speak of such things, is what Aragorn says.
He does not like it. Now, I'm actually going to criticize one thing that Tolkien used here. He said, the sentence be, said Strider quickly and with surprising earnestness. I think that he should have used, instead of said, hissed Strider.
Sure. I got
Sorry to nitpick. It's one of those things where it would sound better if hissed, because that makes it sound much more urgent on Strider's part. I'm going to nitpick a little.
Joe has 2 more knives in the dark. Slashed bolster at the pony.
Yeah.
Darkening door in the Beren poem. The slash bolster is kind of funny too, because I always thought it's like on the list of bad things. What is this place coming to? Says Butterbur's like, oh, there's people breaking into my rooms, and then they're ripping up the pillows. I don't know, it's just kind of like I don't know. Like I think it was a bigger deal that these strangers bent on ill doing broke into your place trying to kill folks. The fact that they ripped some pillows, I'd rather they not, but it's kind of, that seems to be lower on the terrible things they did priority list. And they scuffed the carpet. Anyway. Yeah. And they tried to kill everyone in sight. Okay, but yeah.
And somewhere else in the village, you have a mustachioed guy with a flat top of hair complaining about how it's Spider-Man's fault. And you have, because it's always his fault. I'm joking.
That's right. So like, get Spider-Man.
Yeah, but thank you, Joe. Wow. Matt, you've got a lot of perceptive readers. Years. Yay for them. I do genuinely mean that. Yay. Now, that said, after that, remarkably, that joke that's in very poor taste on Frodo's part.
But he can say it about himself, right? I mean, if anybody can say it, he can.
Yeah, we get the. I'm going to be honest. I really like this. We get a bit of the history of the Last Alliance, and I just love the name for the Last Alliance because it's such a fitting name. It just sounds thematic. But we've got the Song of Gil-galad. Honestly, I love this song. But I can't quite sing it, so I'll pass it over to Dan or Matt to sing.
I mean, I won't sing it, but I could say it if you want me to recite it.
Same here.
All right, recite.
Okay. Gil-galad was an elven king. Of him the harpers sadly sing. The last whose realm was fair and free, between the mountains and the sea. His sword was long, his lance was keen, his shining helm afar was seen. The countless stars of heaven's field were mirrored in his silver shield. But long ago he rode away, and where he dwelleth none can say.
With a bit of sorrow.
For into darkness fell his star, in Mordor where the shadows are.
You could have said that with more sorrow.
Okay.
It was well done, Dan. I appreciate it, sir.
He rode away, and where he dwelleth none can say. For into darkness fell his star, in Mordor where the shadows are. I love Gil-galad as a character. Honestly, people can criticize Ardref's kingship, but they cannot criticize how he raised his son. Like,
Well, it's interesting here too is so Sam is saying that line, and then there's questioning about, oh wait, Bilbo said it. Did Bilbo just make this up? And then Strider's comes in. He's like, he didn't. Bilbo, he did not make it up. It is part of the lay that is called the Fall of Gil-galad, which is in an ancient tongue. Bilbo must have translated it. I never knew that. And it's it shows how well I think Aragorn knew Bilbo.
but it also
It's just the way the line is written. It's like it suggests that he feels that he should have known Bilbo translated this poem. Anyway, this is kind of interesting little thing there. Like, yeah, I didn't know he translated that. I should have known that. Anyway.
But it also speaks of another thing. He ended up. The thing is, Tolkien says this was part of a longer lay, and I wonder if at one time, like with the Lay of Luthien, he flirted with the idea of doing a full-on epic poem to Gil-galad, because oftentimes Tolkien, I think, did get struck with that fancy. But for some reason, he just came to detest the Lay of Luthien and just decided it wasn't good enough, and he stopped writing it. I think it's because he published it in the local school paper, and then it just didn't get the reactions he wanted, and he just decided to dump it. But
well, speaking of that lay, here Mark is mentioning that if you switch Mordor for Angband, that the poem could fit Fingolfin as well. It's interesting, but anyway.
Yeah, it could. It could. I just think that Gil-galad and Fingolfin are good material for full-length epic poems, which is a mode of storytelling that is massively underrated and needs to come back in style. I'm serious. I just love that poem. Anyways, thank you, Dan, for reading it.
We should mention too the keen lance that is being mentioned in the poem. Aiglas, aka icicle. That was Gil-galad's weapon of choice.
And it's interesting that it's icicle because, well, there were not. Rarely has his kingdom ever been that of the Noldor has ever been in the north and whatnot, because really the Lord of Winter and Ice are respectively Morgoth and the Witch King of Angmar. So icicle is an interesting choice because rarely do we see Gil-galad associated with winter. But given that his was the winter of the Noldor in terms of their civilization, might be fitting, and might be where we're supposed to kind of
maybe also like a fire and ice type of thing, you know, the fires of Mordor versus
I think that's what it is. Yeah. But I also think it's a reference because, you know, like you've got like Fingolfin, for example, who ruled in the spring of Arda, I think it is. And then you get the summer of Arda. And this is now the winter of Arda as far as the elves are concerned. So there's a dual thing, fire and ice, and also, civilization.
Well, so as we get through that, as the hobbits are interested in this Gil-galad figure, can you tell us more about him? Aragorn said, well, you know, Frodo certainly knows about Gil-galad. And so Frodo responds, I know only the little that Gandalf has told me, said Frodo slowly. Gil-galad was the last of the great elf kings of Middle-earth. Gil-galad is starlight in their tongue. With Elendil, the elf friend, he went to the land of... No, said Strider, interrupting. I do not think that tale should be told now with the servants of the enemy at hand. If we win through to the house of Elrond, you may hear it there, told in full. So it's one of those also, don't mention the name of the enemy, but it does bring up this interesting theme of the lore that's being presented in this chapter. So keep in mind that the last several pages of this chapter all take place at night. We started at night with Freddy doing his amazing deeds. And then these character names, Elendil. Yes, that can mean elf friend, but it can also mean lover of the stars. Gil-galad's name, as we hear from Frodo, means starlight.
Elbereth.
Right, exactly. Aragorn tells the story of Luthien Tunuvio. Tunuvio means nightingale or daughter of twilight. Frodo uses that elven phrase, as you just mentioned, Elbereth Gilthaniel, to ward off the Witch King. Elbereth, Queen of the Valar, also known as Queen of the Stars. Elrond, to whom they're trying to reach, and he gets mentioned, name dropped right there by Strider. His name means Star Dome or Vault of Stars. And then, of course, one of the stars in the sky is a Silmaril being ferried across the sky by Elrond's father, Eärendil, who also gets name dropped in this chapter. It's just got, and of course, the chapter is called A Knife in the Dark. So there's definitely a night themed consistency to this chapter.
And on page 186 of the Black Book edition, we also see there Strider forbidding them from using the term Mordor, because you have Sam and Pippin who keep just name dropping Mordor.
Yeah,
Strider is like,
please be quiet. Yeah,
yeah, he's being the smart one. They're being, foolish. But it's like that meme says, everyone and Pippin of Gandalf.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's another good contrast. Gil-galad from Fëanor.
Right.
One of the first
Spirit of fire versus this, being associated with ice.
And Gil-galad was also someone who, in French, we'd say sang-froid, which is to say level head. So it means cold blood, but it's actually a positive term because it means you're like, okay, son sang brûle, like his blood burns. Like the thing is, in French, like in all Celtic languages, there's reference to how your blood boils and burns and whatnot when you get heated with fiery emotions. And keeping a level head, you keep your cold blood or your blood cool. And I don't know how to describe it in English, but that's Tolkien knew French and could speak it. And so by comparing the hot-tempered or hot-blooded, or I don't know how to describe it, but like basically the passionate Fëanor, you have here the level-headed Gil-galad. There's a direct contrast being made between the two, I think.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah. I think Gil-galad was known for one thing of being a prudent leader in a lot of ways.
Unlike Fëanor. Yep. I'll just say this. Anyone saying Fëanor did nothing wrong, Fëanor did everything wrong.
Fëanor was a disaster.
Yeah. Joffrey was a better king.
He had talents. He had skills. Just his morality was a bit screwy with his pride.
Joffrey Baratheon did better in Game of Thrones. I'm just going to be honest. Fingolfin did nothing wrong. Even Finrod as a king did nothing wrong. Thingol did nothing wrong. Fëanor did everything wrong. Anyways, Gil-galad, not Gil-galad. Frodo sees some scratches, and you can see them in the book. They're actually runes, and they basically give out the letter G, which is to say Gandalf. And of course he says Gandalf was here, and so is Red. And kudos to anyone who caught that reference. Then on page, 188, we find out it's been 14 days, a full fortnight, that they have to voyage and before they can arrive in Rivendell.
Yep.
Now, I'm trailing a little behind you, Matt, but the Rangers have passed by there, as you mentioned. Now, let's see. My notes are a little weird.
Well, okay, I'll jump in while you're doing your notes because you've now arrived at Weathertop. So there's an interesting quote there where we kind of learn a little bit about the history of Weathertop.
Yep.
And so, in fact, the hobbits are worried because they see like ruins on top of Weathertop. They've just come away from, the Barrow Mounds and had a terrible time there. So they're asking, like, wait, are we heading to a bunch of Barrow Mounds? Is there any barrow on Weathertop? No, there is no barrow on Weathertop, nor on any of these hills, answered Strider. The men of the West did not live here, though in their latter days they defended the hills for a while against the evil that came out of Angmar. This path was made to serve the forts along the walls, but long before, in the first days of the North Kingdom, they built a great watchtower on Weathertop. A Mansul, they called it. It was burned and broken, and nothing remains of it now but a tumbled ring like a rough crown on the old hill's head. Yet once it was tall and fair. It is told that Elendil stood there watching for the coming of Gil-galad out of the west in the days of the last alliance. And so, yeah, Weathertop has this very important part of the lore, the history. If you go way back, you're talking over 2,000 years earlier when Arnor split into three parts, the three different brothers. We get this quote from the appendices. In Arthedain, the line of Isildur was maintained and endured, but the line soon perished in Cardolan and Ruthaur. There was often strife between the kingdoms, which hastened the waning of the Dunedain. The chief matter of debate was the possession of the Weather Hills and the land westward towards Bree. Both Ruthaur and Cardolan desired to possess Amansul, Weathertop, which stood on the borders of their realms. For the Tower of Amansul held the chief Palantir of the north, and the other two were both in the keeping of Arthedain.
Now, there's another thing Tolkien does here. Now, real quick, you always compare, Matt, the breakup of this kingdom to what happened after Charlemagne's death.
Right.
With his grandchildren when they split his empire.
And Louis.
The empire of Louis le Pure, Louis le Debonair, his son, into three. Lotharingie, what would become Germany, and France. But there's another thing Tolkien's doing here. What's an interesting fun fact is that Germany and France have warred for almost 1,000 years over Verdun and the border region. And the thing is, what's interesting is that it all began at Verdun, where they fought for a long time over that piece of territory, that and other border region territories. So I think there's a direct comparison here being made to Verdun, in that Verdun is when the Treaty of Verdun is when there was a great split that was formalized, and both kingdoms of Germany and France would fight over this sliver of territory along the border. And the thing is, I think Weathertop being that center where the split, they're fighting over this, is reminiscent of that. I think Tolkien's making a direct reference to history there. But I also think, real quick, interesting fun fact about the Lorraine and Verdun and that entire region is Germany has typically tried to militarily annex the region. France has typically invested money and resources into the region, but also into trying to assimilate the region into French. So basically, where Germany tries to conquer militarily to grab it and declare it German, France tries to win the people over through culture and language, so that the region is now very much a French one. And people I've spoken to who are from there typically feel that they're French and they belong to France. So there's a movement there to try to break off from Germany and join France. So, like Germany always takes the short-term goal of conquest. France has taken the long road of trying to conquer through other means to win it over and take it permanently.
I was in Strasbourg around Christmas time. Strasbourg calls itself the capital of Christmas. So I'm like, all right, we're there. Anyway, one of the interesting things there was the guide that was taking us through the city was commenting on the number of times throughout the last few hundred years that it's been French, German, French, German, French,
yep.
German. So it's at the moment it's French, but they're like, okay, anyway. But yeah, there's you're right. The border kept changing.
Yeah, and the French have pretty much like before World War II, and even after, under Charles de Gaulle, tried to expand it further east by culturally and linguistically assimilating more and more of the border people. So they're pushing ever more into Germany and trying to take it over.
So Mark has asked a side question about the word Aman. Aman Hen, Aman Sul. He's asking how many Aman names are there? And it's a fairly common name. I don't think it's only like a couple. Like, for instance, Aman Hen, there's Aman Laws like right across the river from that particular place.
I don't know.
There's an Aman Lank, I think, is like Bald Hill is the Greenwood, Mirkwood Hill. Then I think also it's a version of Aman that is Amen. So like the Emin Wheel is a version of, so it's a hill anyway. So I feel like there's probably a dozen or more. Probably. Yeah. So I think I don't think it's like a, only these 4 things are the preeminent get to use that word. I think that word gets used quite a bit.
And Amun is one of the variants of the name Amon, which is
Amun-Re, the god.
Deity that precedes Re, that was fused with Amun-Re.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And in the Middle Kingdom period. I think the New Kingdom period. Fascinating period in Egyptian history. Yeah, it would have been New Kingdom because New Kingdom precedes. Yeah, the collapse in the Bronze Age. Anyways.
Right, and yep, Amun-Ruth is another one. So yeah, there are a few different Amans in there. Just to finish out, so on this for Aman-Sul, obviously the big thing to get was this Palantir, which obviously was basically their cell phones of the past. They could actually talk to each other across very long distances. Very helpful tactical gear that would be great to have. As it turned out, eventually, still like over 1,000 years before the events of the War of the Ring, the king Arvedawi from Arthedain was forced to flee when the Witch King, who comes into this chapter, invaded and destroyed Aman-Sul. Arvedawi took the Palantir with him, took a second Palantir with him as they fled again. And eventually he and both of those Palantiri drowned in the ice bay of Forachel when their boat sank. And so that's where they lie to this day, at the bottom of a bay. But yeah, so that's kind of where that history all ended up, and underwater, unfortunately.
So for Amun's sake, we have the Song of Tenuvial as well, which honestly, this is too good a song not to speak of. I really like this song. So let's give it over to Matt to recite.
Oh man, I mean, this is a very long poem, by the way, too. So how about I'll go with the first 2 verses of it. Now, also, it's a tricky poem to read because it does the rhyme scheme is very different, and they even make mention of it in this in universe in the story. They're like, what does he say? Strider sighed, paused before he spoke again. That is a song in the mode that is called An Thenoth among the elves. Hard to render in our common speech. Yes. Okay, but I'll read you the first 2 stanzas. The leaves were long, the grass was green, the hemlock umbels tall and fair, and in the glade a light was seen, of stars and shadows shimmering. Tenuviel was dancing there to music of a pipe unseen, and light of stars was in her hair, and in her raiment glittering. There Beren came from mountains cold, and lost he wandered under leaves. And where the elven river rolled, he walked alone and sorrowing. He peered between the hemlock leaves, and saw in wonder flowers of gold upon her mantle and her sleeves, and her hair like shadow following. So yeah, it is a beautifully written poem. It's true, and again, the rhyme scheme very intricate, and he follows. He's very structural about it, and it makes for a very there's a sense of etherealness about it. It creates its own sense of myth. I feel like as you read it. Yeah, no, it's
enchantment.
very good. Joe's like, an umbel is a plant structure shaped like an umbrella. Well done. Thank you, Joe.
That over hills were doomed to roam, and forth he hastened, strong and fleet, and grasped at moonbeams glistening through woven woods, an elven home. She lightly fled on dancing feet, and left him lonely still to roam in the silent forest, listening. He heard there oft the flying sound of feet as light as linden leaves, or music welling underground. In hidden hollows quavering, now withered lay the hemlock sheaves, and one by one, with sighing sound, whispering fell the beechen leaves in the wintry woodland, wavering. Dan's turn.
Aw. Okay.
We're just passing the book around.
Yeah.
He sought her ever, wandering far, where leaves of years were thickly strewn. By light of moon and ray of star, in frosty heavens shivering, her mantle glinted in the moon, and on a hilltop high and far,
As on a
hilltop high and far, she danced, and at her feet was strewn a mist of silver quivering. When winter passed, she came again, and her song released the sudden spring. Like rising lark and falling rain and melting water bubbling, he saw the elven flowers spring about her feet and healed again. He longed by her to dance and sing upon the grass untroubling.
Well done, Dan. All right. We're doing the whole thing. I'll take us home then.
Yep.
Again she fled, but swift he came. Tenuviel, Tenuviel. He called her by her elvish name, and there she halted, listening. One moment stood she, and a spell his voice laid on her. Beren came, and doom fell on Tenuviel, that in his arms lay glistening. As Beren looked into her eyes within the shadows of her hair, the trembling starlight of the skies he saw there mirrored, shimmering. Tenuviel, the elven fair, immortal maiden elven-wise, about him cast her shadowy hair, and arms like silver glimmering. Long was the way that fate them bore, o'er stony mountains cold and gray, through halls of iron and darkling door, the darkling door mentioned, and woods of nightshade morrowless. The sundering seas between them lay, and yet at last they met once more, and long ago they passed away in the forest singing sorrowless. So, yep. It's it's interesting because it's for Aragorn in particular, this tale is very relevant for a couple of reasons. First, the obvious parallel to a mortal in love with an elf, mirroring his own relationship with Arwen, but also, he does mention it's a long tale of which the end is not known. And one of the reasons the end of that tale is not known is that the line of Beren continues on in Aragorn himself. So he very much identifies with this story. I feel like he can.
He's a
it wouldn't take
fanboy.
much for him to put himself into that story.
He's a fanboy.
He's a fanboy. Many thanks, Joe. Bravo.
All right. Jet read it the best. The dog read it the best.
Yep.
Couldn't resist. But he also Aragorn goes on to explain quite a bit of the story and how Thingol, a king of the elves, who is technically referenced in The Hobbit, though not by name. Though in The Hobbit, they mention Bilbo and the dwarves. The dwarves kind of take more the side of the dwarves who butchered Thingol unjustly, and because they were paid. I'm just saying, Thingol did pay his employees. He was a good boss. They didn't need to unionize, but they did, and they murdered him. I'm taking Thingol's side. He's always right. And at least where the dwarves are concerned, he was nice, boss.
In that scenario, you could probably see, if you were in a court of law, like trying to side one against the other, you probably could make a better case for Thingol in that situation than you could the dwarves. But overall, Thingol also had his issues.
But in that situation, he was completely in the right. Like, I already paid you. Why would I give you my? Like, I didn't pay you to work. It's like I paid you to work in the house.
Thingol did say some nasty things, yes.
Yeah, but like, come on. Like, it's like if you hire someone to build your house and you go, all right, I'm ready to move in. Oh no. This is our house now. We work. Yeah.
We're keeping it. We made this thing anyway, but yeah.
But I paid you for it. No, it'd be
not being a dwarf apologist. That's funny.
I think it'd be better to compare it to someone renovating a house for you. It's like, yeah, but now I moved in, but I only paid you to renovate the place. Yes, but now I'm declaring legal ownership. You can't do that.
Yeah, no. I get you. I get you. And
I'm not
who was more in the wrong kind of thing. Of course, the dwarves did pay for it quite terribly. With our very own Beren coming through and just wiping them all out, killing them in the stream or whatever it was. Yeah.
What's interesting about that is that it's the first time we really see Beren in a majestic manner, because in the Beren and Luthien story, he was also a very good father to Turin. He loved Turin. Yep. And let's be honest, Morin was a terrible parent. So when Turin is sent to Doriath, that was a step up for parenting. Giving him to a decent parent, because arguably Luthien was also a good person. So that owes to Thingol's upbringing of her. So he was a good dad. He did do a good job raising his kids. The only thing is, but what I was going to say was Beren, arguably, as he first appears, is almost more a damsel, because throughout the story, Luthien's got to constantly rescue him. Beren is a damsel when we first see him. But then the story of Thingol's death, when Beren goes to avenge Thingol, is when we first see Beren in the much more masculine warrior aspect. And we kind of see that he isn't just a damsel needing to rescue and crying out, Tenuviel, rescue me. He's not Princess Peach anymore. He's the badass. And so this is an interesting thing that Tolkien does.
He ate a mushroom. He powered up, and then he could jump over all the sewer pipes. All right, very good.
And dwarves, yeah, that's exactly it. But yeah, Aragorn telling the story is really
Robert. Thingol would have been sent to HR with his negative words about the dwarves. Yes, good call.
Oh, sure, but the dwarves ultimately.
Does that mean he deserves to die? That's your question.
Yeah.
That's a tough HR policy. Wow. Okay.
A reprimand by HR. Okay, that's fair enough. If the dwarves
goes in his file, permanent file.
Yep.
There.
And if the dwarves want to also hashtag me to him, fine. Sure, there's a legitimate argument to be made. But firing, come on, like some joke I could resist. But what's interesting is that well, actually, now that I think about it, he actually tells the entire story. Up until Elwing the White, well, she cheats, arguably. As I think Girl Next Gondor, Alexia's once said, Elwing completely cheats, because when the Feanorians go to chase her, she jumps off the cliff, turns into a bird. That's cheating. Like, honestly, like, she should have stood in and died to them. That'd have been fighting fair. But turning into a bird, that's just dirty. Those poor Maethros and Maegor, they were fighting fair the entire time. Sending your daughter's boyfriend on a quest to die, really? Yeah. No, okay, fair.
Wouldn't that be DR? I mean, dwarven relations?
Nah, HR.
HR, okay.
But yes, right. What Thingol asked of Beren was basically go die. And, if on the weird off chance you didn't, then I'll get something cool out of it. But I assume you're going to die, and I'll be done with this whole mortal trying to marry my daughter. But yeah.
And then it turns out, joke's on him.
Yep.
And what's also cool, well, this is basically every father-in-law son-in-law's relationship. But what's interesting is, outside work issues. Yes.
Yeah, that was a personal. You're right.
What's interesting is that Beren actually wins Thingol's approval somehow. Actually, he goes on the hunt with him, and even Thingol thinks he's kind of cool and badass. He did leave Círdan out to dry. That's a very true statement. Eärendil, Aragorn mentions he's the ancestor of the kings of Númenor, that is to say, Western Nessie. Western Strines, je crois que c'est appelé. So this was story time with Uncle Strider, and damn, is it a great part of this chapter? Probably one of my favorites.
And he picks this story partially because it's probably always on his mind. Because as I said, he's in his mind he is Beren essentially, but also he's trying to move away from the Gil-galad story because that's going to be discussing Sauron and Mordor, and he wants to avoid talking about those things because he feels like he might actually help evoke these things or alert them to the Nazgul's presence. So he's trying to lighten the mood a little bit as well, although it's not really that light a story, but it's a love story at the heart of it, and so he tries to change the topic.
But one can arguably make the comparison of Aragorn to Elendil or Isildur, and neither of them met a very nice fate. So maybe he's thinking, I would rather think of Beren, who dies pretty much of old age, rather than...
Okay, that's true. His eventual death, yeah.
But there's another selfless way of reading it, because there's another person one can compare Elrond to, and that's Gil-galad. And Elrond is his surrogate father, so Gil-galad doesn't mean a nice end, so maybe he's also hoping Elrond will meet a nice fate, rather than, being cut down or burnt to death. Because in the appendixes, it's very clear that Elrond and Aragorn are very close. And there's something they share in common with, I guess, Thingol and Turambar.
You're just on that point of Mark there, that yes, Thingol was an isolationist to the point of I'm hiding behind the girdle of Melian, and you'll never, I'm not helping you. You don't have to help me. I'm here. I'm protected. To the detriment, perhaps, of his neighbors, for sure.
Well, in French, we call that being a nationalist.
All right,
I'm joking. I could resist a joke. Yeah. Oh man, I gotta stop cracking jokes. I'm not a good comedian. I'm not you, Matt. But I'm just having fun here. But
as you should. This is
a fun novel, and this is actually a really good chapter. And of course,
and let's face it, a lot happens in this chapter.
Oh, yeah.
They go from Bree, they travel for quite a distance. They get to Weathertop. In the meantime, they've had the Nazgul attacking Crick Hollow. Up on Weathertop, they are confronted by the Witch King and company. Frodo gets stabbed. I mean, not a lot. He puts the ring on. All these things happen in this chapter. It pushes the story forward quite a bit.
This is not filler.
No, definitely not. And interestingly, he still has time to do these little lore building, right? He still has time to tell the story of Gil-galad, to tell the story of Luthien, Tinuviel, and Beren. So anyway, again, it's very artful writing on behalf of Professor
from the master.
Yeah,
because he is the master of literature. Because he's Tolkien. And what's interesting is that Strider's the first one to take notice that something's off and directs the hobbits to basically face outward. That is to say, look out. And of course, Pippin is the first to be overcome by terror because Pippin. I'm joking. I have to crack the joke.
No, he does not do a lot in this chapter, and what he does do is basically cower and throw himself to the ground. And yeah, he's not the stalwart standout of this chapter for sure.
That comes later, but
yeah,
Fatty would have done more.
There's a chance to prove his quality later.
Fatty would have done more.
Oh, hell yeah. No, this wouldn't even been a fight. I mean, it'd been the Witch King would have showed up, would have done a little inventorying, like, okay, we got what do we got? A Frodo over there. We got a wait, is that Freddie Bulger? We're out of here. Get out. Go. They leaped off of Weathertop, float away.
And you've got, of course, the old chasing like in Scooby Doo with Fatty chasing.
Right. That's great. No, so yes, there is this big confrontation, and in the stress of the moment, Frodo can't resist the urge to put the ring on, and then he sees our foes in their kind of native form and their spirit world form,
which is fascinating and terrifying, as they don't look very nice. They actually, the way they're described, they sound kind of like phantoms and demons.
Yeah.
And I like that Frodo cries out, "Oh, Elbereth, Gilthoniel!" And as he strikes,
which is a very popular phrase that is used. It's like a little prayer, a little mantra that our heroes use throughout the trilogy at times of great. Like I believe Sam uses it when confronting Shelob. There's a couple other. Anyway, there's points where this phrase gets uttered, and it's one of these like you're evoking somehow the power of Arda in that moment.
Now I forget what the battle cry of England was in the Middle Ages, but I know Scotland's became Bruce because Robert the Bruce. They're invoking him and his spirit. But the French, it was Montjoie Saint Denis, which is to say Montjoie. That is to say a hill in France. And Saint Denis, who was the first saint of France, and it's his chapel where the French kings are buried. So by saying Montjoie Saint Denis, you're chanting and calling upon all the kings of France, including Saint Charlemagne, Charles Martel, Charlemagne's grandfather, as well as the likes of Philippe Auguste, a famous crusader. But apparently during all the crusades, Montjoie Saint Denis was the French battle cry. And so I think there's also a reference here to these various battle cries. I know that the English one involves Saint George, but I don't remember the exact battle cry. So
we're told in chapters to come that actually by saying that phrase in front of the Witch King, it was actually an excellent defense against it was a little bit of a shield to the Witch King's powers. So it had a desired effect.
I'm just looking something up. Let's see. I believe it is. I think I found it. It's on Wikipedia apparently. I think it's not. Let me see. I hope I'm not wasting people's time here. I just think this. No, you're not.
It's fine. While you look it up, I'll read that one little passage when we see the Witch King in his true form. You might call it true form, his spirit form.
I think I may have found it. Cry God for Harry, England, and St. George. Which, interesting.
Gotcha.
So, these are battle cries common in the West. So this is Elbereth Gilthoniel. One could probably compare it to a Crusader battle cry, because Frodo uses it as a battle cry and strikes at the feet of the Witch King. And apparently the cry does more damage than the knife.
Right. Which later, there's going to be a knife they got from the Barrow Downs. It's going to do some more damage to the Witch King, but that's much, much later. But yeah, so we get this quote from when Frodo puts the ring on and he sees the Witch King and his companions. Two of the figures halted. The third was taller than the others. His hair was long and gleaming, and on his helm was a crown. In one hand he held a long sword, and in the other a knife. Both the knife and the hand that held it glowed with a pale light. He sprang forward and bore down on Frodo. So, yeah, we get this taller figure than the others, wearing a crown. Tarathanomir, damn it. That's why I have a Witch King is the Witch King is the name of my video. My wife named that video, by the way, and kudos to Jackie for that because I thought it was a great name. Yeah, it goes through a long. I don't know. Is it worth going through at least some of the points of why I think Tarathanomir is our Witch King, or if you out there have your theories? But okay, we'll set the thing with a couple of quotes that we get from either the appendices or the Silmarillion. We get this quote: "Men proved easier to ensnare. Those who used the 9 rings became mighty in their day. Kings, important, sorcerers, and warriors of old. They obtained glory and great wealth, yet it turned to their undoing. They had, as it seemed, unending life, yet life became unendurable to them." Okay, so you have the situation: 9, and at least kings, plural. So in their day, some portion of those 9 were kings.
They were all kings.
Yeah, and maybe all of them. I'm not even going to say that they all weren't king, that any of them weren't kings, but at the very least, there were multiple kings among them. You could say, like, well, if they were a sorcerer, maybe they weren't a king. But you're right; they were maybe all of those things: kings, sorcerers, and warriors.
The Witch King was also a sorcerer.
Right, exactly. So then you've got another quote. "Yet Sauron was ever guileful. It is said among those whom he ensnared with the 9 rings, 3 were great lords of Númenórean race." Okay, so you've got not necessarily from Númenor, right, from the island, but you've got 3 Númenóreans were among the 9 who were turned. We don't know the identity of very many of them. We know there's Camul, the Easterling, who is certainly not Númenórean. And so that leaves 8. 3 of the 8 were of Númenórean descent. The odds are reasonable that the Witch King would be one of them, perhaps. Then you get, when you're talking about Tarathanomir, he's the 13th king of Númenor. He's also by far, he has the second longest lifespan of any of the Númenórean kings. The first was Elros, who basically, chose to be human, chose a human mortality as opposed to an elven. So he had the longest lifespan of any new. But second, by a long shot in a way, is Atanomir, which goes to the idea of they had, as it seemed, unending life, yet life became unendurable to them. We get this quote: Atanomir is the first of the Númenórean kings to not hand over the scepter of power. He keeps it himself. He's the first one who's like, no, I'm going to hold on to leadership till I die. And so it says, and Atanomir lived to a great age, clinging to his life beyond the end of all joy, which again sounds very much like they had unending life, but life seemed unendurable to them. But okay, clinging to his life beyond the end of all joy, and he was the first of all the Númenóreans to do this, refusing to depart until he was witless and unmanned, denying to his son the kingship, the height of his days. We get another very interesting quote. It was Tarathanomir who first spoke openly against the ban of the Valar, and declared that the life of the Eldar was his by right. Thus the shadow deepened and the thought of death darkened the hearts of the people. So another very, telling thing of somebody who has the ring might be against the elves, and also the idea that I want that power for myself.
Mine.
Mine. And then you get this is kind of maybe an incidental little reasoning, but I feel like there's something to this. I believe it's the Tale of Years, in the appendices, it goes through, Tolkien lists important events that happened in the various ages, including the Third Age. And now, he doesn't list the death of every single king. He doesn't do that. But he does list the death of Tar Atanamir. And it's 2251. And so all that he writes during 2251, the important events of that time frame, says death of Tar Atanamir, Tar and Kalaman takes the scepter, rebellion and division of the Numenorians begins. About this time, the Nazgul, or ring wraiths, slaves of the Nine Rings, first appear. So you correspond. Our living Tar Atanamir disappears, presumably dead, and the Nazgul arrive at the exact same time. Got a little interesting there. Now, later, Christopher Tolkien, when he's doing the Silmarillion, he retcons Tar Atanamir's death to 2221, not because of anything I think that he saw written by his dad, but he's like, it doesn't make sense. Surely my dad meant 2221. That would make more sense. But I'm saying maybe the dad did make sense. Maybe he had built in this idea of the timeline of the Witch King, and he just hadn't, said it out, made it public. But in his mind, his own particular headcanon, Tar Atanamir was your Witch King. Now, obviously, the big problem there is apparently he died, and apparently the next king took over. So that would require somebody isn't telling the truth somewhere along the way there. But I could, in my video, I imagine a scenario where the son, very impatient to take over, waiting. Dad's not giving him the throne. The first time ever, he would have anticipated, and Kalaman would be like, obviously, I'm going to become the king when I get of age. No. Suddenly his dad disappears one day, literally disappears because of the ring. And they wait a little while. Like, where did he go? All right, let's just say he's dead so that I can take over. I don't want to have like the missing, we go looking for this guy. Let's just call him dead and I take over. I don't. Anyway, there's ways you could explain how instead of dying, Tar Atanamir just vanished one day and they kept going with life. But yeah, so there you go. There's my Tar Atanamir theory.
And I think that the reign of Tar Atanamir
I convinced Eric.
Yeah. Would have made a great drama or a great season. And I think that having that ending where, you have the son like, okay, listen, we're not going to do an investigation. He's dead. Let's have our state funeral. I am king now. And, like the season ends maybe with the after credits of like the Witch King appearing would have been, or like showing Tar Atanamir turning into the Witch King literally before our eyes would have been a great thing. Like, I just think Tar Atanamir should have had his own season or something.
Yep. Would have been, I hear you. It's really fascinating history.
And it would have been perfect drama.
And then you get the faithful versus the Kingsmen, and that all starts with Tar Atanamir. And anyway, so it's really, really cool. But yeah.
Yeah. So it's Frodo versus Tar Atanamir, and Strider rushes to the rescue.
That's right. We're just going to call the Witch King Tar Atanamir for the rest of the time. And then Tar Atanamir shows up, obviously.
Well, we'll just use it interchangeably. Witch King, Tar Atanamir.
Like Freddie.
Just like we're going to say Chuck Norris, Bill the Pony, same figure.
Yep. Exactly.
But anyways, yeah, Frodo does a great job, like all things considered, given who he's up against. And then, Aragorn shows up with a torch and tries to fend off the Nazgul. And I even think to an extent, Aragorn's kind of, given that he doesn't have his sword has not yet been repaired, he's kind of out of his league. If he had the sword, Anduril, the Flame of the West, he'd stand a better chance, but he doesn't. So he's kind of, this is a struggle. And so, this is very brave on his part.
We also know, I mean, we've been told already that he has experience with the Nazgul. And in fact, if he was, what was his name? Why did I just blank on his name? Instead of Strider, if he was pre-Strider, he would have been tortured by them. But we we get this little line where he says, Sauron could put fire to his evil uses as he can all things, but these riders do not love it and fear those who wield it. Fire is our friend in the wilderness. So he knows enough about their weakness, essentially, that he knows enough about them to know that fire is something that is a vulnerability of theirs.
Yeah. Now, with Andoril...
Trotter, thank you. I was like, clippity clop, clopper, clip. Anyway, Trotter. Right. The Trotter version of Strider, which we talked about in previous chapters, had been, unfortunately, way too well acquainted with the Nazgul. But our version of Aragorn has at least
we don't speak of
encountered them, spied on them, done something, and knows about them, and obviously knows enough about them to be like, oh yeah, if you use fire, you got a better chance. So good on him.
But I think with Andoril, maybe Aragorn might stand a good chance against a Witch King, because Eowyn does a great job against him. So I think.
Oh, great point. That's a great point, actually. Mark just brings this up: stabbing Frodo and then Aragorn. The Witch King's like, "Hi there, nephew." Yeah, like theoretically, yeah. If the Witch King is indeed whatever a king of Numenor, he would have a bloodline connection to Aragorn himself, which would be pretty funny there. Yeah, good call. Good
well,
call.
I guess the Spaceball scene of I am your father's uncle's
roommate, whatever. Yeah,
whatever. What does that make us? Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. But yeah, no, it's that's another interesting little tie-in there for sure. Yeah. Anyway, also another reason why Autonomir might be particularly obsessed with destroying Arnor would be that it's Elendil that was the leader of Arnor, and so that was the faithful who successfully fled Numenor when it all sank, and it could be like a
unresolved.
I want revenge on that leader of the faithful that led up Arnor.
Yeah, but it's unresolved issue, and it's a rival royal lineage. So
correct.
You have their
like this is mine. In other words, this rightfully is mine. I was the king. You weren't the king. I was once upon a time. So this technically should be mine.
So you have a bit of the wicked stepmother type of trope here, and with jealousy and envy and whatnot, which would fit with Tolkien because he did like his Grimm's fairy tales and whatnot.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting is thematically, this would mean we have to juxtapose Aragorn, against Witch King. So they're kind of opposites in a way. So we have to juxtapose them with each other. And this means that, the Witch King...
That's an interesting topic, actually. Yeah. Maybe I have to think about doing a video on that. That's a cool... The Witch King versus Aragorn in terms of, the mirrors of each other.
Yeah, they are mirrors of each other in a way. I know Stephen Gibbs, the Red Book, did a excellent video, as did Lexi, about juxtaposing Aragorn against Sauron, which is completely fair.
Sure.
Or even against Sauron, or even I've seen some compare him to why am I blanking on the name? The last steward, Denethor.
Yeah.
Juxtaposing Denethor and Aragorn, sure, that's fair. But I would argue it's also really good to compare Aragorn to Witch King of Angmar, because they are kind of opposites.
I can think of one thing in particular that's an interesting parallel between them. They are both beings of prophecy. There's a prophecy for the Witch King. There's a prophecy for Aragorn. There's not a lot of folks with prophecies around them. So anyway, that's one connection. And obviously, if you bought the idea that there's a Numenorian background in Witch King, then they'd be even related. So yeah.
Also, question: how many ancestors separate Aragorn from the ancestor of the throne?
Bunch. I mean, it's not like 5. You're talking going all the way back to say to whatever, to Elendil or something, or Isildur is what you're saying?
No, the one who lost the throne. I forgot his name for the moment.
Oh, to the one who lost. You're talking about Arvedui from the Arthedain, or you? Yeah, I mean, it's still a ways. It'd be a lot.
How many generations separate the two? I wonder.
I mean, you're talking over 1,000 years. I mean, I know they have fairly long lifespans, but not anyway. So I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know the exact number, but it goes away. But you could compare those two for sure. Arvedui and Aragorn. You're thinking maybe also there's a prophecy about Arvedui as well. But those two are connected as well. What does Joe say? Joe said, Witch King accepts a ring and falls to ruin. Aragorn refuses a ring, rise above all his fathers. That's a good, well done. Good mirroring. I liked this quote from Mark as well, saying that the evil stepmother, that's why he's called the Witch King. That's funny. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've got a great ending here to the chapter. Frodo is injured. We're going to find out terribly injured. And
it seems to be about 16 or 17 generations.
Okay, that makes sense.
Since Arvedui, which is a shame because I was wondering if it was 13 again coming up, but nope. So Aragorn was not unlucky. I was expecting either 12, 13, or 14, but instead it seems to be about 16 or 17.
Gotcha.
I had to look up the one meme from well, actually, I wonder if I could present the image. It might make a good last image to this. A bit of a joke that fans made that is very, very brilliant and funny. Let me see if I can share my screen very briefly, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. I can then bring it up.
That is no mere ranger. That is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and it goes all the way back to Isildur.
Am I missing the? I'm missing the image, but okay.
Let me see. Well, I've got it right here. It's in my brother's Arda thing. I used present share screen.
Oh, I see it. Yep. Back. That is no mere ranger. Oh, I see. That is Aragorn the second, son of Arathorn the second, son of Eredor, son of. Yeah, that's good. You owe him your allegiance. That's pretty great. I love it.
King Aragorn will suffice Legolas.
Yes. Fredegar would have laughed off a wound from Morgul blade. Barely an inconvenience. That's right.
And he did.
It is but a flesh wound. Yeah, right. Yep. You have to go back to this. Yeah, Andunier split from the line of the kings of Numenor. Did Frodo actually injure the Witch King's foot, causing the shriek? I can't quite tell. I don't think he did, because later on we are told that he didn't. I think it's fairly when at Rivendell. I feel like they mentioned that, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll cover that in chapters to come. But I don't think it did any damage. I think it damaged maybe the blade itself, but maybe anyway. We will find out about that next time, perhaps. So we're going to be back on the Brothers Arda channel to discuss the final chapter of Book 1. Of course, each volume has 2 books. Chapter 12, Flight to the Ford. What else can people look to find on the Brothers channels, good sirs?
Well, on Brothers Arda, there's lots of Tolkien content. I shouldn't be glib. Well, we're primarily over on Substack these days, where we're writing all manner of, dorkly things, so to speak. We're writing fantasy novels of all sorts of variety. There's a mythological one that's like the Silmarillion that everyone can view. It's called the Olympnomachi. There's a story called Darkspire Conspiracy, which is a continuation to the Volsung saga. There's Calad Bulg, an Arthurian Irish type of epic story. And there's also a horror novel, Varcola. There's Baron Cub, which is a wolf and cub type story. except with
Wow.
Anglo-Saxons.
You guys get around. You got the stuff going.
Yep. Ooh, I love this picture. John Howe. He's
Yeah. Oh, he's amazing. Everything he does.
golden.
Tolkien gold.
Yep. But we also have a recently published book called Crown of Blood, which is about the fall of many kings of Caledonia. That is to say, Scottish kings, except fantasy edition. Actually, I wonder if I've got the blurbs open. If you want, I could read one of them.
Sure.
If I can just find the darn thing. I'll just... Ooh, I gotta remove one thing because I can only backtrack so much. Closed. 1 second. I'm going to remove this. I gotta remove from the list. Book blurbs. All right, let me just open this up. And we have... it doesn't have all of them. We have...
Oh, I think they froze
The
up
king
on
is
there.
down, slaying any who stand between them and the power it grants. But can any survive the curse that plagues the kings of Caledonia? And typically we end with 3 kingly lines, 1 crown. So
Nice. I like it, sir. We here on the DorkLords channel, we are currently covering 3 shows at once. We're juggling recaps of 3 different shows at one time. So we're covering the Lazarus Project, a time-traveling sci-fi show from England. We are covering the Acolyte, the Star Wars show, and we are covering House of the Dragon, which is just really, really amazing so far, and I'm really, really enjoying it. Again, I mean, season 1 was amazing. Season 2 continues to amaze. So that's all good stuff.
I have mixed feelings about season 1, but I covered that in a series of team-ups with Jasper Lane. But season 2, I've been watching in. Well, we'll have to probably discuss that sometime.
Okay, great.
That's a series that season 2. A lot of the actors are doing very good work. I will say that they really did a great job with Aegon this season. Last season, not as much, but this season they're fleshing him out more.
Yeah, no, he's not just a mustache twirling villain, which I appreciate. He's not a good king, but he also has, real feelings for the loss of his son and that kind of stuff. So it's really, it's interesting. I like it.
He has some moments of good kingship at times.
No, I'm just saying,
he's a bad king, but there was potential.
He wants to be liked. He wasn't. That's George R. Martin. So that's a whole different channel. But anyway, and then I've got to pick my next topic to talk about. So I'm working on new topics to do for my kind of Tolkien deep dives. So we'll do that as well.
Tar Canamir and Aragorn mirror images.
There we go. Exactly. Got the topic from our chat here. So with that said, thank you to everybody out there for joining us. Many thanks to you brothers, Joe and Dan up in Canada. And we will see everybody next time. Bye, everybody.
See ya. Elbreth Gilfonio.